This is a review of our Grandio Elite Greenhouse.
If you want to see more of this review, stay tuned.
So this is our Grandio Elite Greenhouse. So far this is our third season growing in it, and overall we think it's pretty awesome. There are a couple things that we want to let you know about, so stay tuned in the rest of this video.
We use this greenhouse to get a jump start on our plants and get them ready to go outside because we have a short season here. We don't grow exclusively in the greenhouse. We just use it to get our plants a little head start on the season instead of just starting them inside our house.
Yep, and so we start putting stuff out here in about March, I want to say, and then by the middle of June, it's totally done. So we don't really have experience with starting stuff any sooner or growing through the winter or
growing when it's hot.
Yeah, or growing when it's hot. That would be a whole nother story for sure. So that's our experience of how we use this greenhouse. So first we want to show a tour of the outside. We have the 8x12 motto. It's called the Grandio Elite. And you might notice this giant windbreak we have back here. We constantly get really steady winds from the southwest, so we decided to put this up. Before we bought this greenhouse, we were really worried about buying it and it literally blowing away and being somewhere else in the yard. So we decided to do this as a little bit of insurance, and after some of the windy days we've had, I'm really glad we decided to do that. So how we built it was, it's 4x4s with some SunTough paneling and some vertical bracing 2x4s. We did also put these little extra braces. They're nothing special, just tacked on braces. And those have really helped a lot. When it's a really windy day, this thing, if you stand behind it, you can hardly feel the wind. So it's pretty amazing, and we don't know how to speak about the greenhouse without it, but our greenhouse has stood up to it. We frequently get 40-mile-an-hour steady winds up to 60 or 70-mile-an-hour gusts, so it gets really windy here. It can be a little spooky, and we were just really worried about investing in a greenhouse and then having the whole thing blow away. So this windbreak has been a really good insurance policy for us. So with that being said about our windbreak, we can't really give a full review as far as how well this has stood up to wind because we haven't really experienced true wind on it, but it has stood up to some crazy wind from other directions. So it's been pretty awesome as far as that goes. Real quick, I wanted to mention something else about assembly. When we assembled it, we did decide to caulk the whole thing pretty much to kind of help with that wind stability of keeping these panels nice and tight in there.
So a big part of the whole setup of the greenhouse was getting the foundation in because we didn't buy the kit that came with it. So we got some railroad ties, and we made sure we got them the bed ground really nice and level.
That was pretty important because the way this whole thing connected together, it was really important that we had a nice level surface.
If it's not level here, it's really going to be out of level here, and then the bolts and stuff and holes won't line up, and so you need to make sure that's good and level.
So as far as putting this together, it was 3 seasons ago. I don't totally remember it, but I do remember that it wasn't that bad. It took us a weekend, maybe 2. The thing that really took a long time was getting the foundation prepped, and we did opt to do the railroad ties around the perimeter. If I would go back and do it, I would probably do concrete, but this is what we decided to do at that time.
This is way cheaper for sure.
Yeah, we cheaper.
Took the railroad ties and laid them out to the right size, and then we scribed them with a chainsaw to make the tops level. And then we took a auger on a drill and drilled holes out for rebar, and then we pounded rebar in 18 inches or so to make sure we anchored it in 100% solid, so there's no way that this thing would ever lift off, barring a tornado or some other natural disaster.
Yeah. So, and then the frame of the greenhouse, the base did bolt to the railroad ties. Yeah. Inside, we decided to do brick pavers in there. That was a pretty good decision, we feel like. We're kind of glad we didn't decide to do pea gravel because that was our original, or someone's original idea.
Original thought, yeah.
But my thought was that if we did the pea gravel, once we spill potting soil, which we will spill, it will be there forever. And
after the fact, after we got the brick pavers laid, I realized that there was so much better idea because our shelving in here actually will sit level now. And if you had pea gravel, it would get all wonky and possibly spill some stuff off the shelving.
So as far as we're talking about what we decided to do and what we kind of recommend doing if you're thinking about putting a greenhouse in is try to find a spot that's really convenient. The spot where we decided to put this, it's close to the house, it's close to water. We were able to wire electric to it. It's convenient as far as it wasn't going to be taking up any other ground that we really wanted to use for planting or other purposes. So it was a really convenient location that just made sense. It's also south facing, so that's obviously something you really want to be thinking about.
If you are using a greenhouse like we use it, where we're starting as early as possible, there's days where we're running plants in and out of the house to try to keep them alive instead of heating the greenhouse and wasting a bunch of power and electricity, just heating the greenhouse for no reason. And so having it somewhere convenient is really a must and a good idea. We would highly recommend that.
So he mentioned that we heat the greenhouse. We do heat the greenhouse in the early spring. We don't grow in this when it's really cold out.
We use a cheap space heater that has a thermostat on it. And so I turn it on to 65 degrees at night in the spring here when it's warm. And then I can leave for work. And we have a wax seal vent on one of our vents. And so when I leave, I know that it's warm. And if it gets too hot, the wax vent's going to open at 80 degrees or whatever, and the space heater will have already been off.
So kind of something that was a learning curve for us when we first got a greenhouse, because this is our first greenhouse we've ever had, was the fact that you do have to heat it, and then it can get too hot. So you don't want it to be too hot, because that can kill your plants as well. So it's really finding that happy medium as far as the temperature goes.
85 degrees or so is what you should be shooting for as far as what we've noticed. And it's very easy to go over 100.
It is very easy to get it really hot in there. Sometimes in the middle of the summer when this is all boxed up and there's nothing in there, I'll go in there and it's 130. It can get really hot in there. So it does its job. Okay, so we want to start with a list of pros and cons now, things that we've liked about this greenhouse and some things that maybe we haven't enjoyed so much. So the pros far outweigh the cons. We'll just start off with that. You want to start with
We've been
pros?
very happy, and we would recommend highly if you're a serious gardener and really like to grow stuff to go ahead and jump on it and buy a greenhouse. And we recommend the Grandio. We aren't getting paid for this, obviously, but we are very happy with our purchase, and it's held up very well so far.
Yep. So the big pro is it's held up well so far. We've had a very noticeable difference in our plants. We used to start all of our plants inside, have a bunch of lights everywhere, plants everywhere, and they worked. They were great. They were ready to go out into the garden when it was time for sure, but our plants are just so much more healthy in a greenhouse. They're so much more like stocky and not leggy. They're better, and it's nice to have a dedicated spot for the plants so they're not all over our living room is what we would do before.
Your vegetables will be ready to start producing when they go outside into the garden instead of being just alive and coming along. So with the 8x12 size, we really like it because it is actually pretty economical. I've talked to other people who've had bigger greenhouses, and they say that it just takes too much to heat when we're here in Montana, and in March we can really get some pretty dang cold temperatures. And our little tiny cheap $20 space heater can keep this thing at 50 degrees on a cloudy day when it's 29, well below freezing, just running all day long. And so it's relatively cheap to heat if you need to. If you have it stocked full of plants, you don't want to run them in and out of the house, you can just kick that little cheap space heater on for the day and it'll work.
For sure. Also, another really big positive is it stayed pretty clear as far as the plastic goes. We haven't noticed much yellowing. The assembly, I know we talked about it already, but it was pretty easy. We did end up with a bunch of extra hardware, but it was just the two of us and somebody else on a weekend, so it was pretty easy. Overall, the biggest pro really is this greenhouse has paid for itself because we take our produce and we sell our produce, and we sell plants, and it has just paid for itself time and time again. And of course we can a bunch of stuff. It feeds us. It's been amazing. So huge pro. Wish we would have done a greenhouse a lot sooner, but hey, live and learn, and now we have it.
We used to be able to get to the farmers market here in Montana right around September 1st, and by that time we can almost be starting to get our fall snow, and so the farmers market isn't very busy, and you don't make as much money. But now, since we've had the greenhouse, our other produce comes in much sooner, and so we can get 3 or 4 markets more in at least.
Yeah.
Which is a noticeable difference in income for our small little farm here.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Another pro of this greenhouse, we have the 8x12 model, so it's not super big, but it really does have ample storage. You can see above me there's a bunch of places up top there to hang hanging baskets. We don't have all too many hanging baskets, only a couple, but you could have a lot of stuff up there. We have room in here for 1, 2, 3 shelves on this side, 1, 2, 3 on this side, a big one back here, and honestly, we could add another layer up on top here to have some more space. So it does have ample space, which is another huge pro for us. A couple of the cons now. Well, he will talk about the first big con that he really has every day when he goes into this greenhouse. You can probably just watch him model it right now.
If you're in a big rush pulling plants in and out, you can really crack your head on this.
So he's 6'3". Want to stand next to it? He's 6'3". I mean, I'm 5'2". So for me, it's just fine. It's no big deal. But if you're any taller than like 5'6", it's going to be a head hitter. So just, you got to be careful of that. Another con is it has this frame right here. You have to step over it to get in, unless you decided to make the ground flush with it and recess it into the dirt. You would have to step over. So we went with kind of the less of two evils and having a step up here and then a step down into the greenhouse. That's what we went with because not everybody's tall.
Get you prepared for stepping in and not just
it kind of like
tripping on it.
Tells you, okay, I'm going up, okay, I'm going down. It just seems like less of a hazard to us. When this is only a hazard to the tall people.
The other con are the doors aren't designed all that well, as they're on a rail, and they can get knocked off the rail up here pretty easily.
Yep.
And when they do, it goes in off kilter, and so it doesn't go in very nicely. It just binds up really bad.
So right now they are functioning perfectly. So that's a model of how awesome they can be. And all season, this season, it's been fine, but there will be times we come out here and they're a little
If our little kid gets on the doors or whatnot, they'll get them knocked off the rails.
Yeah, so you just got to be careful with the doors. Not a huge deal by any means, but just a con, I guess. Another con has been this weather stripping is kind of coming up. You can see right here, this right here. Can you see that? Just kind of bubbling, and this is the sunny side. So we've noticed a couple of them. So that's just something that's kind of had a little bit of wear and tear. And like I said, this is the third season we've had with it. So that's as much sun exposure as it's had. Another con that we've kind of noticed is that the roof does leak a little bit. Now this might be application error. I caulked the ceiling and I might have missed some bolts, or I might have not done the best job. I went up there and tried to fix it a couple times. It's a little leaky when it rains. It doesn't really bug us. It doesn't rain all too much here where we're located in Zone 4, Montana. But if you're in a really rainy spot, it could get a little bit frustrating if you're trying to keep certain plants dry, because sometimes you want your plants to not get too much water. It doesn't leak like crazy.
The other con to the greenhouse, which really isn't that big of a deal, but it's something to get used to, is just how the windows close. They're on this hole and pull system, and if the holes get off of the posts here, they don't close because the window can slide from side to side. So if you pull it over the side here, it won't close. You just got to slide it back to where it needs to go, and it happens pretty much every time.
Something else to be mindful of if you're looking into getting a greenhouse is that heating and cooling that we talked about. It can get way too hot in here. So when it does get hot in here, we kick on this little fan and it just helps circulate stuff. We'll open up all the windows and all the doors. The wax, this one's a wax opener right here, so it opens automatically. That will open automatically. We kick the fan on. We just try to create as much airflow to get the heat out of here. It blows the hot air out and kind of creates a little bit of a draft. So that's a definite must, because it can get too hot, like we said, and that's not good for your plants. So something that was a little bit of a learning curve for us with having a greenhouse is the fact that when it's a cloudy day, this greenhouse will be the same temperature as outside. So here in Montana, say it's maybe 20 degrees outside. It's going to be 20 degrees in this greenhouse if it's cloudy for us. Sometimes if it's sunny outside and it's 20 degrees outside, it will be like 60 degrees in here. So that's something else to just kind of keep in mind for your local climate, as far as if you're looking into getting a greenhouse to grow maybe like all winter long, or start your plants really early, or whatever you're looking into doing. Think about what's possible in your area. So we do actually have a couple of heat sinks in here that do help with maintaining some heat in here at night, because like I said, when the temperature outside drops and there's no sun outside, it gets cold in here. So at night, when our temperature drops, it gets cold in here if we don't kick our little space heater on. So we do have a couple heat sinks in here. Right now, the heat sinks are, well, the soil that these bigger pots are in are a little bit of a heat sink. Our floor is a little bit of a heat sink, as well as these two trash barrels are filled with water. Total 110 gallons of water. That is a heat sink for our greenhouse. So we have a little device it's called a Govee. It's a little thermometer that can read what the temperature is in the greenhouse if we put it in the greenhouse, and we can see it on our phone. So if we look at it first thing in the morning, we notice that the temperature in here is the exact same temperature as outside after the greenhouse has had all night to sit and cool, and those heat sinks have let off their heat and they're no longer really releasing that much heat. So if you're planning to have a greenhouse to grow in it without additional heat, you just need to figure out a method for doing that if you're going to have some cold nights during your growing time.
Overall, we really like this greenhouse, and we would recommend anybody get a good, reputable kit greenhouse like the Grandio Greenhouse, even if you live in a rough climate like we do in Montana here.
Yeah, when we were looking into greenhouse kits, that is, there were a lot cheaper ones. This one was pretty good bang for your buck, and we're really glad with how strong it has been and how well it has held up. So we do recommend it. And go get yourself a greenhouse. It's really fun to be able to grow your own stuff. And if you're enjoying the kind of videos that we're putting out on our channel, please consider liking this video and please consider subscribing to our channel. It'll just kind of motivate us to keep making videos about the different stuff that we're doing here around our farm.
More coming your way soon.
All right, thanks for watching.